we as being veterans, we also understand, the significance of logistics. And logistically speaking, everybody thinks, well, logistics, what does that mean? Well, that means your food and your fuel, two things that you cannot fight without. So we try to go in and give our perspective of why we need to have access to domestic energy resources. Once we have access to these resources, then we can obviously kind of write our own ticket on some things and then not be so dependent on foreign energy resources.
What's your perspective on the exporting of natural gas, and what does that do for America?
We have an opportunity to, number one, help our allies out because they do not want to buy energy from entities that they know may be associated with terrorism. They don't want to do it any more than we want to do it. But because of the supply and demand system, the way that it is and the way that it has been created to be, it hasn't been, the playing field's never been level for America in a long time. I mean, we actually have to follow rules about safety and regulatory compliance issues with the environment. Most countries, that are heavy producing, I would say that they do not. And some countries I know for a fact that they do not. And the world, everybody that's worried about the environment, I mean, truly, they may want to look at, that aspect of it. And quite honestly, we run into some opposition from folks that are telling boogeyman stories, using fear tactics, to get people to get out and they radicalize some people into this, or they honestly think that we have companies down here that seriously that we're all just some sort of malevolent force to, shut everybody out and hurt the environment and poison the water and all this other crazy stuff that you hear. I mean, we breathe the same air and drink the same water, man. So yes, infrastructure development, compressor stations, rail, maritime. I mean, it's all important that we develop it. And when you run out of gasoline, they're finding out right now in some of these hurricane areas what it really feels like when we shut her all down. And there's a lot of folks out there. There's a lot of solar out there. There's a lot of wind out there and all this other stuff. But when that flood and that hurricane hits, it takes that out.
Department of Energy just came out and re-emphasized that for the next 40 years, I think they're saying out to 2050, fossil fuels are still going to supply about 70% of our energy needs. That's including a great growth in renewables. Is that something that you feel most people in America understand?
Here's the deal on that. I mean, that sends a message to us to let us know, that number one, it's not that we don't want to develop the technology. And I love it how people say, the organizations we work with put in $1 billion a year into renewable energy research. They're doing the best they can. But the fact is that we're going to be dependent on oil and natural gas for a very, very long time. So, instead of buying it from our enemies, why not us, why don't we become the world leader in energy? Why don't we show the rest of the world how to do it effectively and safely? Because we do it every day in America. We do it every day offshore as well. People are worried about offshore and all these other shipping lane issues and anything and everything to try to delay that progress. But really all that does, and we need to let the American people understand this, is the more we delay it, the more money leaves this country, the fewer American jobs, careers. These are not jobs, these are careers. The fewer American careers are we able to have. The American people need to also understand that, we believe in renewable energy. We support it. We have many of our members in Vets4Energy that work for renewable energy companies, whether it be biofuels, whether it be wind, whether it be solar, but they also get it. that we are going to be dependent on oil and natural gas, or AKA fossil fuels, because that would include coal as well, for a very long time, and it's the way that it is. We can't shut off the tap. If you shut off the tap, go down to Houston right now, go down to Florida and some of these other places where they just got hit by the hurricane. That's what it's like to shut off the tap. You go pull up safety. What's the most dangerous thing you can do? Driving down the road in your car. That's the most unsafest thing you can do. Driving in America. The average number of people are killed. Then there's a high rate of people that fall and kill themselves in the bathroom. I mean, that doesn't mean we all stop taking baths. You know what I mean? Or taking a shower. We put. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and that's the kind of stuff that they're putting out there that really just, I feel sorry for them more than I get angry with them. Because when you sit and try to have a conversation, they look at me, and they think, nah, what's that dumb hillbilly know? Well, we get deep into those conversations. And
well, here I am talking to, I'm going to switch you out for a minute because you're talking about the most dangerous thing in the world, driving a car. And I know you've been the receiving end of a few bullets here and there and have seen your fair share of stuff. But let's go to that driving for a minute, because I know you've been kind of an advocate of taking different trips up and down the Purple Heart Trail in America, being a Purple Heart recipient yourself. So 2 things. One is, what's your impression of those Purple Heart trails? But first, let me ask you, you meet a lot of people on those trails and you talk to them about energy. Some are vets or some are not. What are some of those conversations with? It's almost like Meet the American out there when you're out talking to them.
The conversation, number one, we look at each individual as an individual, as Americans, as fellow Americans. Your belief, it's your belief system. The difference is that I'm not trying to radically impose. I'm just trying to, I want to have a conversation. Let me tell you something. I want to have civil conversations with all sides of this, because I think if we can civilly sit down and have a discussion, the majority, not all, because some are on Pluto or Mars. You know what I mean? I don't know where they're at sometimes, but the majority can see your point. And believe me, I have had the pleasure of meeting so many wonderful Americans. And when we travel along the Purple Heart Trail system, we get a chance to see a part of America that few people get to see. Like I told you, I always talked about Woonsocket, Rhode Island. You know, I had never been to Woonsocket, Rhode Island before in my life. But what I found was, I drove down a few of the smaller streets in Woonsocket, and there were little signs up, and there was a picture of someone that had fell in a war, and there were a lot of pictures. And I'm thinking, this little community has given up so much blood and treasure for our defense. And we don't know Woonsocket. We don't know how to drive across America anymore. People think that you have to go to an amusement park to have a good time. Look, take your kids and teach them the history of this great country. Drive the Purple Heart Trail system and explain to your children what a Purple Heart is, what that person had to do to receive that medal. You know, what it means to go through these little towns and to see these monuments. And every town has a monument to somebody that has failed, some World War I or the Civil War or whenever. You know, teach your kids. And along the Purple Heart Trail system, it crisscrosses all across America. Now, it's very difficult to go from state to state to state. I mean, you have to sometimes come off the beaten trail, but I will tell you that the Military Order of the Purple Heart understands that. And so they're always looking for new sections to designate as a Purple Heart highway. So if you're with state or you're with some sort of an organization and you really want to promote patriotism, then get some of your roads and your trails designated as a Purple Heart trail. You can go to the military or to the Purple Heart site, and you can get the necessary paperwork to do that. And it's not that difficult to do.
Hey, one question just came in that I thought was kind of interesting. It's from one of our volunteer chairmen who's participating. And John's asking, what's the most common question you hear about energy in America?
The most common question that I hear about is, I hear a lot about renewables. So basically, the most common question that I hear is will we? Well, there's two questions. Will we ever be energy independent? Totally. I get that one all the time. And do you think that we will ever be at a point where we're using totally renewable energy resources? Those are the two questions. Now, other than what's Vets4Energy, what do you guys do? I get that a lot. But those are the two ones relevant, How do I answer that? That's the key. Okay. Number one, yes, I do believe, and so do most people believe, that there will be a time when renewable energy, i.e. wind, solar, or who knows what's going to be discovered. That's why you got to have research. The research that the petroleum industry puts into this is huge, folks. So, there may be a system of energy creation out there that is yet to be discovered. So do I think that there will be a time when we will be less dependent on fossil fuels? Yes, I do. I believe that. And I believe it'll be sometime after 2050, maybe even later, But I think that there will always be a need for petroleum-based products. And I'm very honest about that. And the other thing that's asked about is, will we ever become energy independent? How close are we? We are, and I usually take my two fingers and just say, we're that close. We've just got to build the infrastructure. You got to put in the pipelines. This not in my backyard and all this other stuff. I get it. I understand it. But look, we've got to look at the bigger picture. What's good for America? What's good for your great-grandchildren? Nobody's coming in and totally wiping out the national forest system. These companies and organizations, they got to breathe the same air too. They're not going into some sort of a oxygen-produced bunker every night to live. They live in the same communities that you do. So, it always amazes me that that people are afraid that somebody's going to do something intentionally, and they would never do it intentionally. But yes, we're very close to being energy independent, but we have got to get the infrastructure in place. We've got to do it. Everybody has a role to, number one, have the discussion. Don't be afraid to have the discussion about. I see so many people that don't even want to talk about fossil fuel because they know some radicalized person is going to jump up and start screaming and cussing and showing their rear end someplace. Don't be afraid of that. Have those discussions. They'll calm down. They're like a little top. They'll be spinning around out there. They get all excited and stuff, but have that conversation. So when you talk about response, first off, we have to have courage to talk about it. We talk about each individual has a responsibility. Yes, we don't waste anything. Nobody's talking about going in and running your air conditioner full blast or your heat full blast. And there's some personal things that we can do as citizens when we talk about energy conservation. Turn your lights off. Hey, look, I use solar lighting on my farm, in my garden, around my outside of my house. I've got solar lights all over the place. And they're nice because they're motion detector lights, so they kick on when you come by. And they're expensive, but they're nice to have. And they save me a little bit of money in the long run. So we can talk about those things. And then each individual state, we need to engage our state legislators to have the discussions about energy infrastructure development in every cotton-picking state in America. No matter what your energy resource is, we really need to be able to sit down. And I'm telling you, this New England, my goodness gracious, poor New England. 58% higher rates on energy. Every one of you citizens should be up there at your state capitals demanding that be changed. And let me tell you, it's not going to be changed by putting up more wind farms and solar panels. It's going to be changed by putting in an infrastructure system, which includes pipelines, that are going to be able to deliver you that energy from Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia, Kentucky, or wherever else, Ohio, in the form of natural gas. I think it was up until 2016, Chandler. They were, folks in New England had even had some energy resources coming in from Venezuela and even Yemen, for goodness sake. Thankfully we went up.
That's the dirty little secret, is the energy will get there one way or another, because I'm going to make it sound kind of capitalistic, but we're Americans, we demand it, we will get it. It's just a question of where we get it from and how much we're willing to pay for it. And there's many different ways to go. Hey, before I ask you to wrap up, because I am going to be respectful of every time, before I give you a moment to just a final thought, I'm going to go ahead and ask everybody on the call a couple of folks always ask, what can I do to help you guys out? It's pretty simple, really. If you could just go out and find 5 veterans, every veteran on the call here knows plenty. If you just get 5 other veterans to come to the Vets4Energy website and register, that way they can start participating in these calls. These calls, they'll get some periodic emails from us. We don't hassle them. We're not going to do anything like that, and no big bother. But that way we can slowly build our audience and get this message out, like James is saying. We can just start that conversation wider and wider. So bring them on. Bring in as many as you can, but we are asking for 5 per person. And with that, James, any last thoughts before we fold up?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I've answered those questions. And, hey, look, all of you out there, you can send us a message, through our Vets4Energy website. I get those emails. Chandler gets those as well. If there's a question, you get off the line and you say, daggone it, I forgot that. There's a way you can call me. You can email me directly. I would love to talk to each and every one of you about anything. The thing about all of you, especially that are out there as state chairpersons, you are the master of your own destiny. Out there promoting what is good. What's best for your state, whether it be in Colorado, California, Alaska, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, wherever you're at, what works best for your state. If you need support, please call us. What do you need? How can I help you? Do you need me to make a trip to come to your state, to sit down, to talk with you, to meet with you? I'd be happy to do that as well. I just want to make sure that we are collectively working together to promote an energy independent America that is going to provide the careers for our veterans and for our citizens of this country, so that we are not dependent on foreign energy resources, so that we're not paying 58% higher energy rates just because you choose to live in the beautiful area called New England. That's unfair. And you know what? We need to fix that. And I am, as an American living in West Virginia, I am disappointed to know that my brothers and sisters that live in the New England states have to pay that much more for their energy. It really upsets me. And it upsets me enough to take a stand and say, look, fix this, and this is how you can fix it. And that's pretty much it. And like I said, it is my pleasure to be part of this great team. And I am so thankful for each and every person that is on this call, each and every person that participates. You have no idea the major impact that you have made for this nation.